Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins, and this is a good story for those who are looking for facts and looking to get to the bottom of what's really going on with this whole situation. I'm calling it the panic-demic and not the pandemic, because there's a lot of evidence showing that maybe causing 30 million people to lose their jobs was a little bit of overkill, and that there might have been some political motivations behind shutting down, the whole economy, taking away people's livelihoods and everything else, and locking people up in their houses. Let me read this. This is an article from PennLive.com, and it says that the University of Pennsylvania Medical, or so University of Pittsburgh, sorry, the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center a doctor there argues that COVID-19 is not as deadly as feared, and they also said that their hospitals will shift back to normal. So a UPMC doctor on Thursday made the case made a case the death rate for people infected with the new coronavirus may be as low as 0.25%. 0.25% is 2.5 times more deadly than the flu. So, almost like a super flu with a higher level of contagion than the flu. Far lower than the mortality rates of 2 to 4% or even higher cited in early days of the pandemic. Dr. Donald Yealy based it partly on studies of levels of coronavirus antibodies detected in people in New York and California, and partly on COVID-19 deaths in the Pittsburgh region. The studies found that 5 to 20% of people had been exposed, with many noticing only mild illness or none at all. Quote, "We've learned that way more people, far more people, far more people have actually been exposed to the infection without any knowledge of it. That makes the overall death rate much lower," said Yealy, who was the MPMC's chair of emergency medicine. Now, again, you may want to call him a quack. I know people, I guess when people get stuck to their own worldview, facts and information only serves to make them angrier. But I'm really speaking to people that really want to get to the bottom of this and haven't sort of decided what their opinion is going to be before the results are even in. So he says, let's see here. Many people just didn't feel sick at all and recovered without difficulty. Yealy went on to offer a hypothetical scenario of 3% of the people in Allegheny County, which is around Pittsburgh, being exposed, a conservative number compared to the findings of New York and California. That would mean 36,000 people in Allegheny have been exposed to the virus. With COVID, with 94 deaths, that would mean that 0.25% is about 1 out of every 400 people exposed to the virus would have died. And if you recall, most of the people that die are very old. They have a lot of what they call comorbidities, which means that they were probably going to die soon from something else anyway. And so he says there's a big difference between 0.25% and 7%. Yealy said that about 1,300 people in Allegheny had tested positive. That would mean, in his hypothetical scenario, another 34,000 have been exposed but had no symptoms. He noted the latter group may also have antibodies to protect them from future infection, although he pointed out it's still unknown how much protection people get from previous exposure. Yealy further said the majority of the deaths among UPMC patients involve people over 80. So the majority of the deaths, as I've mentioned this 1,000 times. I'm not a doctor, but which is why I talk to doctors, right? I'm not a doctor, so I know this, which is why I listen to doctors and I read the research, I read the data, I talk to a lot of physicians, and a lot of physicians, just being real with you, have told me that some of this might be a money grab. That basically, because the federal government has thrown so much money at it, a lot of hospitals that are struggling for money because they're losing money from their other patients right now because everything's focused on this virus thing. So they're it's like if you have 3 artists with your record label and one artist is going to be the star, you decide that artist is going to be the star, and all the resources are going to go toward that one artist. Well, you're not making money over here and over here anymore. You've dedicated all your time to this one artist. So you're going to make the artist a star, even if they're not talented, right? Even if you realize that you made a mistake on their talent. So with COVID, I think that they made a mistake on the impact. I think that they thought that it was going to be the star, if you will, meaning that it was going to make, it was going to really make the biggest impact, and therefore bring in the most revenue. The government threw $1 trillion at it, several trillion actually, at the problem because we shut down the whole economy. And so a lot of money is going in that direction, a ton of money. So what I've been hearing from people that are really esteemed, established doctors. I'm absolutely flabbergasted by how a person's credentials disappear if they say something that's unpopular. How people's respect for someone's credentials will go away because they say something that doesn't fit their pre-existing belief, right? And that kind of tells me the difference between rational and irrational people that are just sort of hyped up with emotion, almost like being on drugs, versus people that are just trying to figure out what's going on. And so basically, what I've been getting told is that a lot of things are being diagnosed inappropriately because there's more money in that particular diagnosis. The reason that temptation is probably there is because there's no forced confirmation. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to prove anything. So in a way, it's like when I was talking to you guys about the dangers of some of the arguments behind the Me Too movement, where they were trying to send people to prison with no proof. I said, if you do that, you're opening up the floodgates. You're going to have a free-for-all where anybody can say anything, and you're going to be believed because you're in a certain class of people. Well, now, doctors or hospitals, which are hard up for money, they're struggling financially, they're laying people off. A lot of these hospitals that are struggling for money are like, yeah, well, we can diagnose anything. So since we don't know for sure, we think it could be COVID, maybe something else, but let's go with COVID because that's the best answer, right? Why wouldn't you go with the best answer if you're genuinely not sure? Like if you genuinely don't know for sure, and they say, well, just if you think it might be COVID, go ahead and just say it might be COVID. It's like, but you ever go do your taxes and the tax person's like, well, just give me an estimate of how much you think you spent on such and such, right? It ain't right, but you know how people do, right? If there's no forced confirmation, people are going to misjudge. People are going to make inaccurate statements. So another speaker, Dr. Rachel Sakrowitz, let's see here, the chief medical officer for the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center's intensive care unit, said that 234 COVID-19 patients have recovered and been discharged. She said this is very good news. It means people are getting better and we're all back on the right track. She said that only 2% of the system's 5,500 beds are occupied by COVID-19 patients. So only 2% of the beds are occupied by COVID-19 patients. Remember, the medical system has to run with money. They need money. These hospitals need money. Doctors make a lot of money. They cost a lot of money. So I think that they're processing the financial burden of allocating, 100% of your time or 80% of your time to something that's only taking up 2% of your hospital beds. So that's where I think some of the unhealthy incentives are starting to kick in. He cited that figure in explaining UPMC's plans to quickly increase its volume of the non-emergency surgeries that were largely banned to conserve beds and supplies for COVID-19 patients. The ban is now being eased as the volume of COVID-19 patients falls short of worst case predictions. So they were waiting for all these COVID people to come in. They were waiting to use up all these beds, and now these beds are empty because they did not get the Holocaust that they thought they were going to get. I'm not going to say I knew everything from the beginning, but I told you my little back of the envelope indicator was when celebrities started announcing that they had it. I was waiting. I said, if 20 celebrities announce they have it and it's that bad, then two of them should be dead, right? So how many of these celebrities, A-listers, I was looking at A-listers, Tom Hanks, Idris Elba, people like that, how many of them got it and how many of them are going to die? None of them died. None of them had to go to the hospital, from what I understand. None of them were on ventilators and respirators. Chris Cuomo on CNN, he dragged out and dramatized his infection to make it look like this terrible, terrible thing, and he was okay, he was fine. And the thing is, what I was getting on the back end though was I was getting a lot of people who, and I hate it that it happened this way, but a lot of people who had hurt feelings because they did have loved ones who died, who happened to die at that time, who were diagnosed as having the COVID. I don't know if they were tested or not, but and so it almost came off as if saying, for anybody who said, look, it's not as bad as people say, it was almost contradicted by the fact that there were people dying, right? There are people that die from the flu. There are people that die from car accidents. There are people that die from gunshot wounds. And so when you say, look, we shouldn't shut down the whole economy, like gunshot wounds are bad, but we shouldn't shut down the whole economy to protect people from gun violence. You're not saying gun violence doesn't matter. You're just saying that you can have an economy and still have gun violence at the same time. So I argue that you can have an economy and still manage corona at the same time. One does not. It's not as if only one can exist at a time. So this hospital, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, says they're going to go back to normal. They're going to start operating back to normal because they basically are saying, look, we thought it was going to be this crazy thing, and it wasn't. Yealy was asked whether people should worry about COVID-19 more than the regular flu. He said that people should be worried differently, pointing out that both take their heaviest toll on the elderly. So if you got a great grandma, somebody in a nursing home in your family, you definitely want to make sure they're protected from flu or anything, right? A lot of the people the older people, the senior citizens, which made up the majority of the deaths, people over 80 that died from this could have died from that or something else too. So right, so hygiene and washing your hands and things like that is always really important. He also said, let's see, what else did he say? He said, quote, he would not think of it as more or less, just two different illnesses that have that share some features but have some distinct differences. Sakharowicz said she expects COVID-19 will be part of the ongoing quote-unquote disease burden affecting Americans, and as with the flu, doctors will find treatments. So basically, I like this article because they're saying, look, it's not the end of the world. You don't have to shut down your life forever. You can go to work, and as long as you're careful, you're going to be okay. And one of the saddest things about all of this, the saddest outcome of all this stuff that's been going on, this craziness, is the fact that, I have senior citizens in my own family who are scared to see their grandkids now. And I'll tell you what, if this thing turns out to have been a farce, if it turns out to have been fake, if it turns out to have been exaggerated, if it turns out to not be what people said it was going to be, I'm going to be mad because I don't think they're ever going to see their grandkids again without fearing that something bad can happen. And if they are older and close to death, well, you don't see your grandkids for 5 years, you might never see them again. And I think that's the thing. That's why I was so insistent upon finding the truth about this. I didn't care if people thought, if people got mad. I didn't care if people thought, you're a quack doctor, this and that. I saw all the stupid comments, right? I learned to ignore people that are not looking at facts and not looking at data, not looking at the truth. So I think these politicians are playing a game with you. I think that they are manipulating you. I think that they are lying to you, and I don't think they care about you. And I think that it's up to you to be smart enough to find the truth. If you're not smart enough to go look for the truth, then you're not smart enough to be listening to me right now. So you should go listen to somebody who's going to feed you a bunch of nonsense and put you in a fantasy world, because I'm here for truth. That's what I believe in. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Have a good day. Hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Peace.